Welcome to Caring Community with your hosts Jay and Diane West. In this community, creative initiatives are welcome. A culture of transformation is normal, and miracles are expected. Welcome to Caring Community.
Hello, I'm Jay.
And I'm Diane.
And this is Caring Community. Thanks for tuning in to our show today. Our special guest, Charles Nelson.
Hello. Pleasure
Hello.
being here. Good to see you again and be in your presence.
It's just that I love being around. Every time I get a chance to be around you, and we were talking on Facebook the other day, and he said, we need to get together. I said, yes, we do. And it was providential because not only did we meet, but then we met our previous guest that was just on the other show, and Randy Goodwin, and the actor and the producer and everything that he is out in Hollywood, but from Omaha, and then new relationships are being formed, all sorts of things because of a note. Never discount a note through social media about getting together, okay? Because God may use it for something significant. Yeah. So we're gonna introduce. I'm gonna tell the story a little bit about how we came to know you. We were on a Sunday. My family, my wife and I, and our son, after church, had decided to go to Panera Bread for lunch. And I like to encourage people in public. I like to offer to pray for people. I like to make them laugh, just whatever, because when you're in the workforce, you're doing whatever. Sometimes you're just going through the routine, you're tired, it's the middle of the day, you wish you could go home, but you can't, or you're having a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day.
Yeah.
And we were at Panera, and this lady who shares the same name as my wife, her name was Diane, she looked like she was having a tough day, and it ended up being your mother. And as I interacted with her, I just said, are you having a tough time? And she said, yes. I said, why don't you come over to our table later, and we'll pray with you. Now, I offer to pray for people lots of times in public, and the majority of them say yes, but every once in a while they say no. Mm-hmm. But I'd never offered to have somebody, usually it's, can I pray for you right now? Not, can you come over later? Because that usually gives people a chance to come up with a reason to turn it down, you know? Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not gonna bother them, and they're engaged with whatever. But she came over later, and she shared some things, and she shared about you. She said, my son's in prison, and she said, my daughter-in-law, which is his wife, had just been murdered in a drive-by shooting. And she was just, and there's the kids, and she was distraught, and so Diane and I and my son Jason prayed for your mom, Diane Penn. Mm-hmm. And then another lady from the staff came over and asked for prayer too. She saw that was happening. And multiple times going back to Panera Bread, I would meet both of them. So went back to Panera 2 or 3 days later, the same store, which is near where I live, and she was there. Again, I asked her how she was doing. She said, okay. I said, do you need anything? And she said, well, actually, I do. I need a baby bed, a toddler bed, and I need a washing machine, and she said, I need a lawnmower. I don't know if you know that part of the story or not. And I said, well, I think I can get those things. So I just sent out an email to people, and we got all that stuff. A friend of mine who now lives in Indiana, his name is Pastor Sean, he went out and bought her a brand new washer and I think a dryer as well from Nebraska Furniture. And Sean Davis went out and did that, and then somebody else over the lawn, and a bunch of people gave cash, and that forged a relationship with your mom and me. Every time I'd go to that Panera, I would see her, and well, not every time, but frequently, and then a weird thing started to happen. She would start to comp my meal, okay? Yeah. And she would not let us pay a penny. No. So then we got gun shy. It's like, we don't want to go to Panera because we don't want to look like we were trying to get a free meal, So we'd go to a different Panera. Well, it was really funny.
And then she would be there.
It's
like, what?
There's 7 Paneras in Omaha, and we'd go to a different Panera, and she'd be there. And we go, how did you get here? And they say, well, they moved me around.
Me. Yeah.
So somewhere in there, I wrote you a letter or two, and we corresponded a little bit. Not a lot, a little bit. And I know I'm talking a lot. You'll get to talk here in a minute. And I know that you got released from prison, and as I recall, you went to like a halfway house in Council Bluffs, but I could be wrong on that. You went to something.
Mm-hmm. Yes, no, that's correct. Did a small stay at a halfway house over in Council Bluffs.
And I invited you to come to Eagle's Nest because They do a lot of prison ministry out of Eagles Nest. They correspond with a lot of prisoners. We have a prisoner at our church, a former prisoner at our church now, who was in jail for 16 years for bank robbery. And he's attending our church now. He was at Eagles Nest. She came to Eagles Nest, and then I didn't see you for a while, and then we connected more later. But fill in some of the gaps in there.
All right. Well, that's a whole bunch of gaps. And yes, I did. I knew everything about how you guys had met my mother. And that was, she really enjoyed it. I remember her telling me about those things. That was definitely a very rough and interesting time in our life. Just to even add a little bit more to the backdrop of what that even felt like in those moments, I was being shipped around from different prisons as they was preparing for where I was going to do the bulk of my time. While I was downtown in Douglas County, the last letter I got from Vanessa, she was just feeling so lonely and lost. She was explaining how she couldn't trust and depend on no one, and I was always a friend. There was a line towards the end of her letter that I would never forget. Her question was, where was her friend when she needed him? And that about broke my heart. I wrote a letter out to her, but before I was even able to verify it through phone call or even receiving a letter back, they had already started moving me around. I went from Douglas County Corrections to Leavenworth in Kansas. From there, I went to Oklahoma, and then from there I was in West Virginia.
Wow.
I had gotten West Virginia, that was towards the end of November in 2009. It was either the week of or the week before Thanksgiving. I just remember I was fairly new to that process in that environment. And
Why were you in prison?
I had got myself in some trouble behind some drugs and hanging out. Well, you know, I used to say I was hanging out with the wrong people. At that point in time, I was the wrong people to hang out with. And so I made a whole lot of
Well, you're not the wrong
choices.
person to hang out with now, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I enjoy hanging out with him. So.
Well, you know, I mean, one of the things is we live in a broken world, we live in a broken society, and the way that we just deal with brokenness, we either running towards God because of our brokenness or running from Him.
Right.
At that point, I didn't even know how to run to God, and so in the midst of my brokenness, it was trying to fix it with all the wrong stuff. I remember one time I had a bowl. It was like my favorite bowl, and I broke it, and it had chipped and everything. And so I was trying to put it together. I used regular glue, and it didn't work. I went and bought this other kind of glue, and it didn't work. And I was just trying all these different types of glues to get this bowl to come back together and be useful again. And that's where we stand at a lot of times in life when dealing with our brokenness. We're just trying to find the right glue to keep us together. And for me, what I was using at that time, it was wrapped around a lot of marijuana use, a lot of different drug selling, a lot of things that led to me in prison.
We've had several guests who had drug issues, and Curtis Barnes was on with Teen Challenge, and he did a lot of the same things you did. He went from one drug to another, one thing to another, trying to fix it until he met God in Teen Challenge. But, you know, there was no super glue that worked. There's a supernatural glue that works. His name is Jesus. But outside of that, the others just kind of, they wear out and they break again.
Yeah. Yeah, that is, and that's the bad thing about it. It's never enough. It's never enough. And so that's what landed me in prison.
What was your sentence? How long?
I did about 48 months. I don't even think I completed the whole 48 months because at that same time, while I was doing the end portion of my time, there had some laws that had changed that let me out a little bit early. But it was there and at that, I guess would have been that second week in December. I remember getting a call up to that chapel's office, and I was like, okay, maybe they're just doing some more religious preference checklists or whatever. And he asked me about Vanessa. Did I know her, and what about our relationship? And
Vanessa is
Kevion's mother. That's
right.
Kevion's my daughter as well. So
right, right. We'll get to that. That's another
yeah.
horrible situation. It's just, yeah.
And so he had called me up there. This happened. She was killed on the 9th, so this had to be the 11th, because I believe that the 9th was on a Friday, and I didn't get the message to me until Sunday morning.
I was going to ask you about that. Well, how did you feel when you got that message?
Yeah,
Because we never talked about that.
Well, and that's why that letter meant so much. That where's my friend when I need him?
Right.
Yeah.
In the most difficult time, the last moments of her life, I wasn't even there. Because of the security clearance and stuff, I couldn't even come back to attend the funeral.
Right.
Sure.
I don't have, I missed out on a whole lot. It hurt. It hurt. It still hurts.
Yeah.
It was a very difficult time to go through, being confined in such a manner that made it even more difficult. And at this point in time, I'm probably 6-7 months of practicing following God's lead.
Right.
And so I really don't even
You're
know
a new
what that
believer.
even looks like.
Yeah, you're a new believer, and you're not in an environment that's conducive to doing that.
No, you want to talk about being being set apart. I was set apart from the Midwest, moved all the way over to the East Coast in an environment just out of the state of Nebraska. There were only 3 other prisoners that was from Nebraska, and none of them I ever knew.
Right.
And so that was just very unique, a very isolated incident.
Right. So you're getting released. You're coming here. What year would that have been?
When I made it to the halfway house originally, that was in 2011.
Okay.
And that was very interesting. In Psalm 91, it gives us a promise at the beginning of this psalm: for he that take refuge in the secret place of the Most High, that he shall abide under his special care. One of the principles, or one of the situations that was in there, or I guess I'm kind of really saying it backwards. The principle was that you will be right there up under his care. Or as could say, that's the promise. One of the principles to it is that on through life, you will see things, go through things that may cause some people to fall off on one side and it cause others to fall off on the other side. Not verbatim, but it is in that Psalm 91,000 to fall on the right side, 10,000 on the left, but none shall come close unto me. Man, I see the reality of that. Is when I came home, everything that was before was once again.
It didn't go away. It didn't disappear.
No, it did not go away. And it's interesting. It seems as if when you come out of prison, all the time in between just seems to vanish or disappear. So all the hardships, all the hard times, all the struggling to get through holidays, and all the times of knowing that you want to just be able to go out and be able to talk on the phone or watch whatever you want to watch on TV, or go to bed when you want to, or
have a snack, whatever.
Yeah, just the simple things that we, I want to sleep in this morning. No, you can't sleep in because you're in this program, and you can't do that. Right. And so there was just so much that you really take for granted until you're in there. But when you get out, it just seems like all of that it becomes minimized in your mind. But and by experience as well. I had old drug dealers that told me, hey, I know you're home now. You could, if you need anything, let me know. Yeah. I went through all the struggles with dealing with the personnel in the halfway house. And they have a difficult job. I'm not going to minimize it. Just knowing how to address and deal with people and try to figure out their continence. I could about imagine the percentage of people that may just come in there and just may use the whole program just to get out, and most likely will probably mess up over again, versus someone that actually is coming in there and strong-headed and minded about everything that they're trying to do. But there were so many barriers. I had to get everything from the start. You need social security card, IDs, and birth certificates, and it was just like you need one for the other one. You know, I need my social security card. Okay, well you need your birth certificate to get that. Okay, well I need go there. Well, okay, well you need some type of ID. Well maybe you should try to get your transcripts. You try to get your transcripts, and it was just like like this, and it's something that's frustrating. It's something that's frustrating. I can see how that could be something that could make people
experience
fall
a
off.
similar thing that come out of children who come out of foster care. You know, in foster care, I don't know, it used to end at 17, and then they're suddenly thrown into the world, and they give them a bus ticket or something. Then they're on their own. They don't know what to do. They haven't been trained. They've been in so many different homes. They don't know what to do. You know, and so it's a similar thing. You're coming out of prison. You've basically lost your identity. And the only thing you have, in reality, now I'm getting this, is lots of times you come out, the only identity you really have is your old identity, with your old drug dealers or your old friends, and so it's so easy to go back to that crowd. Because that's the only identity you have. Everything else has been stripped away.
Man, that's why whenever I read Paul's epistles and read his encounters and what he endured, it had to take a man that was willing to be led by the Spirit to come from what he was to allow God to use him to what he could be. Because I just think about that, how many times would he have to wrestle with that? Because that old identity, it comes along with some old tags. So tags are supposed to be meant for clothes, not for people. And,
you know, we were sharing last night, you mentioned Paul, and I'm just gonna jump to it because we literally just talked on this last night. Hope you don't mind. It's in Philippians 1. I'm just gonna share one verse. We literally just talked about this. Philippians 1:29. For to you it has been granted on behalf of Christ not only to believe in him, but also to suffer for his sake. It's been granted. One translation said graciously granted. To believe, everybody wants to do that, but then to suffer, nobody wants to do that. You don't hear very much teaching on that.
No, you don't.
You don't hear anything about that part, you know, and it's right here, and Paul's saying it's been graciously granted. When you've been granted something, that's like a gift. Like if you get a grant, a financial grant, that's a gift of money you didn't have that now you can use for your business or your vision or your ministry or whatever. And you know, that's one of the cool things I've admired about you is that as I watch you even from afar is that you didn't fall back to the same patterns. You had an encounter and God was caring for you, and then you somehow, I don't know how you got connected with Zion Baptist and some of the other things in your life, but you know, I'm sure the stories there are all God lined up.
Oh yes, I mean you can see a lot of God's principles attached to it all. Being able to realize that what James said is absolutely true, that God, he would test us to make us better, but in our tests sometimes the enemy will use our temptations to make us bitter. The one thing we have to realize about our temptations is he uses things that are first of all available, and they have to be something that's a craving for you. So, and there's another word I'm looking for, but I can't think of it right now. But it has to be something that you desire. You know, so for me, like being able to find these, like when I came home, was having a hard time for the first time trying to get a vehicle. Because in order to get a nice one, I was probably going to have to take out be on a car lease or paying for a car. Well, and the lifestyle I live, you don't have that type of responsibility. And then I'm just now fresh home, or with things. And one of the things
you got to have transportation. You got to have a license.
Yeah.
You don't have a license to drive it. You don't have a birth certificate. You don't have your transcripts. You don't have this. You don't have this. And it's one big thing on another to make it difficult.
Yeah, and I had an individual that said, "Hey, we can go right back to the life that we were when you left. I got a car that's already, we could just put it in your name and all this." I mean, so he would use his temptations, and it made those things accessible. They were available. They were easy and readily available. But I'm thankful that God stripped away the desire.
Right.
Yeah.
Because even though those things were available, you could put out a table right here and probably line it with all sorts of kind of liquor, and it's available to me. But I don't have a desire for liquor,
right.
So it's not going to be.
It's kind of like for me. It's kind of like gambling. I'm not a gambler. I don't care to gamble.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a draw to me. It doesn't mean that I didn't gamble in my past. years ago, I did a few slot machines or whatever, you know what I'm saying? And I remember, I think it was our 25th wedding anniversary, I wanted to go to Lake Tahoe, which is where we got engaged.
Oh, okay.
Okay? And there's South Lake Tahoe, which is in California, there's North Lake Tahoe, which is in Nevada. And they have casinos there, okay? So part of it's in the gambling state, part of it's not. And I remember my mother saying, "You just want to go to Lake Tahoe to gamble." And I said, "Mom, there's 5 casinos within 15 minutes of my house. Why would I fly, spend all the money to fly, rent a car, have a hotel so I could gamble when I could just drive across the river?" You know what I'm saying? So it has no draw on me at all.
Yeah.
None, you know. And so I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. And so, yeah, and you know, so, I mean, life did not get no easy, but he is truly a rewarder of those that diligently seek him.
Right.
And I think that's probably what has kept me along the way, is that each and every time he has been a rewarder. I remember when those laws passed, and it was even going to immediately cut down my time in the halfway house again. I was just like, awesome, this is great. And I prayed to God, hey, look, you know, and all this stuff, everything, you know, I did a whole lot of stuff, but in the case I was indicted on, I probably was like the littlest person on that poll. I was the last one to get sentenced. I got shipped away the furthest. I went through all of these different things. I was the last one of the last ones that was getting out, and I was just like, Lord, can you just work for me in this situation? And just briefly, a quick overcast, I got a call from the guy that will be my probation officer. He's like, well, I do want you to know that I'm overseeing all the cases that's going to be affected by this new law. So I know your name is going to be there. So you're going to get some kickback. I just don't know when. So I went back to the Lord. Thank you, Lord. But I know you can do better. And these things are going to take place over about like a 2 or 3 day time span. I know you can do better. And I'm going back to the halfway house. People that have these other drug convictions, they're scrambling, they're trying to get in touch with lawyers, judges, their POs, and they're doing all that they can. And I'm just going to God, like, okay, I know you can do better. Oh, wow. And he came back with another response to talk to the PO. He said, well, I did see your name and the paperwork is going in, but it still may be about a month before you get it. So I just know that it's getting worked on, it's in the process, you do have it coming. Just be patient. Okay, Lord, I know you can still do better than that. I remember it was the day I was on my lunch. I was right at the end of my lunch break, working at, guess where? Panera Bread in Council Bluffs.
Wow.
I do remember you had a Panera Bread gig for a while, so. Yeah.
And so I was right at the end of my shift, not at the end of my break, and I had got a call from my caseworker at the halfway house, and I was, so it was kind of interesting because she never called me. And she was like, hey, how's everything going? Everything's all right, going all right. She said, okay, well, she asked me about what time I was going to be off. I told her what time it was, and she was like, okay, well, when you get here, just make sure you have a ride because we just got your paperwork in.
Oh.
And so you'll be ready to go home. Oh, I was just so excited. I went in and I told my supervisor about it and was just so excited. He was like, man, you know what? Man, get out of here. Cool. And so I walked back to that halfway house and I was just so excited, giving God so much praise because I knew he could do so much more. And then I get back to that halfway house and as I'm signing my paperwork and everything, the caseworker said, you know what the interesting thing is? Not only are you the first person to get your paperwork through, you are the only person that has got their paperwork so far.
Wow.
Wow.
God is truly a rewarder of those that diligently seek him. And I'm not saying that I just begged him to the point where he changed his mind, but I went through a whole lot of series of events where I had to choose to be led by the Spirit. Yes. Just like Jesus had to choose to be led by the Spirit to go into the wilderness. He was led by the Spirit. Yes. That means the Spirit took the lead. The Spirit drove him in there. And did Jesus want to go willingly? No, I don't think he wanted to go into the wilderness no more than he wanted to go to the cross when he prayed that night before. Right. Yeah. But he knew the Father's will and he knew how to be led by that Spirit. And that's
and
diligently
he was led by the
God.
Spirit, and there were still the temptations too.
Yeah.
Yes.
The enemy, just because the Spirit's leading you doesn't mean that there's not going to be difficulties, there's not going to be trials, there's not going to be circumstances, there's not going to be the enemy coming in like a flood to try to take you another direction. You know, I mean, we all have that in various ways.
Yes.
You know, and I think it's magnified for you coming out of prison because I don't know who you were connecting with outside of your mom, you know, because your old drug dealer friends are pulling on you.
Yeah.
Your wife Vanessa's no longer living. Okay, she's been murdered, so that you don't have that to go home to. You've got your kids, you know, which we're going to talk about in the next show. I mean, this story gets more just crazy because you're going to learn his daughter was also murdered. And it's just sad. There's so much sadness. 2 murders in the family,
That's
prison
crazy.
time, drugs. I heard you talk the other day about pimping and different things. A lot of things going on in your life, and yet God's still using you.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? What an
Yes.
awesome God that we serve.
Yeah.
And that's because this is what I do believe. God, when he created this whole world, when he created mankind, God had a perfect design for his creation, and that included a perfect design for each and one of us. Like I said, unfortunately, because of the original sin, we now live in this brokenness.
Right.
And our brokenness, since the brokenness separates us from God's perfect plan, we're always trying to figure out, you know, how to get back perfected. But
We have this theological persuasion, it's called kingdom now, but not yet. God broke in to the earth. He sent Jesus,
yes,
who died and rose from the grave and victorious. We have all that, but he's coming back, and it's that in-between time right now that we're in. Kingdom now, but not yet. There's things happening,
Yes.
but not everything yet. Okay, that's where we live right now. And we're seeing in the midst of COVID-19, we're seeing in the midst of the injustices towards black people, we're seeing all these things happening simultaneously. It's being like these spotlights here for the TV thing. I mean, the light is on. The light is on. It was dull before, but the light is
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
and that's the thing. We have to learn how to live in this, in the in-between.
Right. And we'll pick up on that.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, but we're right at our cutoff time, but we'll do our second show. This is Charles Nelson, my good friend. Good to have you here. God bless you. This is Caring Community with my wife, Diane, at KPAO here in Omaha. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you on the next show in just a bit. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Bye.